From the nation's capital, the Conservative Caucus presents Conservative Roundtable, an in-depth look at today's most important issues.
Welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which broadcasts Conservative Roundtable, now being shown in 122 communities all over America. We're pleased to have as our guest for this broadcast Steve Baldwin. Steve is the executive director of a secret organization, the Council for National Policy. At least it used to be secret, but now everybody writes about it. He was chairman of the Education Committee in the California State Assembly. He's an expert on education issues. He's a husband, he's a father, a very knowledgeable man, and he's got a new book, From Crayons to Condoms. How'd you pick the title?
Well, I'm looking for something that was catchy and would certainly get the attention of people, and it summarizes what the liberals have done to our public schools over the last couple generations.
And what is your view of the future of government education?
Oh, I think it's, I don't think there's any hope for reform.
You would agree with me that we should abolish it?
Oh, yeah.
Good. No more property taxes to pay for it, no more bond issues to pay for it.
We should leave it up to the private sector.
Get rid of it. Get rid of it.
There's really, I mean, we've done everything possible. We've pumped tons of money into the system. We've lowered class size. We've hired more administrators. We've done this, that, and nothing that has been done under the umbrella of reform has improved substantially the academic progress of our students.
Now, there was a little bit of irony in the media recently when it was noted that the National Education Association, or at least its Alaska affiliate, praised Sarah Palin for opposing vouchers. She said they're unconstitutional. What do you think about that?
Well, the book doesn't really get into the pros and cons of vouchers. And there's a good argument to be made against vouchers because it might allow the government to come in and regulate those schools which receive vouchers.
Exactly. That was Sarah Palin's argument.
Yeah. So, you know, I think the private sector could offer educational opportunities, and even without vouchers, they would be able to capture a large segment of the market if those opportunities were to come about someday.
Now, when you were a quasi-czar of education in California, you probably saw the growth of the homeschool movement in your state.
Massive. Hundreds of thousands of families involved in California, maybe closer to 1 million now.
It was shocking that the judges in California tried to outlaw homeschooling.
Oh, they did, and the superintendent of public instruction, the first day I was chair of education, came to my office and told me we're going to ban homeschooling. And I said, no, we're not. And we had a legal battle back in those days, and my side won. So they have been trying to ban the only sector which actually is producing solid students. They've tried to ban in California repeatedly.
And I have a son who's actively involved in the homeschool movement through his organization Vision Forum. What do you think of charter schools, which is another variation on government education?
Well, I suppose they're better than the normal schools in that they tend to have fewer regulations and more creativity. But we have seen charter schools do bad things as well. We have seen as radical Islamic groups be in charge of a charter school and use Islamic indoctrination in the textbooks. And so just having less regulations doesn't automatically mean you're going to have a better education. It might create more opportunities for indoctrination of one special interest group or another.
I agree with you completely. Talk about No Child Left Behind. What is that program? What's involved in it? What does it entail?
It's another attempt by the federal government to use rewards of federal money to supposedly get schools to improve their academic performance of their students, and it's been a disaster. And the whole role of federal education since 1979, when it was created as a present for Jimmy Carter, in return for, he told the NEA he would create the Department of Education, and in return all the delegates swung behind Jimmy Carter. And so the whole department was created on a political notion that had nothing to do with academic performance or quality of education. And it's growing. It's maybe 30, 40 times the size of the budget today as it was when it was first started. And there's no evidence whatsoever that the federal role, which is unconstitutional, has had any role.
There's no constitutional permission for the federal government to be involved in education, except insofar as it relates to the armed forces and the Indian tribes.
That's exactly right.
The irony is that George Bush, W., who said, "I'm the real reformer," collaborated with Teddy Kennedy to vastly expand federal intervention in education.
I'm afraid that happened with many domestic programs in the Bush regime, and education being one of them. And it was strange because year after year after year, we would see more and more money put into No Child Left Behind with no evidence that it was really doing anything of good. Even if there was evidence it was doing good, it was unconstitutional from the very beginning.
What does John McCain think about these things?
I don't know. I understand he might be in favor of charters and vouchers, but even if he is, those should be purely local concerns and not federal concerns. Yeah. And so I've not heard him speak on the federal role.
Palin is much better on those issues than he is.
I think so.
Yeah. And I hope she'll be a good influence on him if they are elected.
Yeah, that's what we're all hoping.
And, of course, I'm supporting Chuck Baldwin, no relation to you, even though you've named your children after him. He's the nominee of the Constitution Party, and when you get into the other issues such as immigration, UN Law of the Sea Treaty, North American Union, Chuck Baldwin is solid. I was very disturbed at a meeting which you and I both attended to see Senator McCain sort of wiggle and waffle on the question of the UN Law of the Sea Treaty, which I regard as very dangerous. It would give the United Nations control of 70% of the Earth's surface.
Yes.
I was pleased to see so many good things in the Republican platform.
It seems to be a very conservative document this year.
Yeah. And they even come in against the North American Union.
Yep.
Words that are not supposed to pass the lips of any responsible person.
I think a lot of credit goes to Phyllis Schlafly.
Well, I was chatting just yesterday with Woody Jenkins, who happens to be a trustee of the Conservative Caucus Foundation, and he talked to me about the work that he and Phyllis and others did in the platform committee deliberations, and there were some great victories there. I have not studied the entire platform yet, but those things with which I'm familiar give me cause for encouragement. Of course, I will never forget Bob Dole saying, I haven't read the damn thing and I wouldn't follow it even if I had. That was in 1996. I hope that Senator McCain has a different attitude. I hope he reads it. I hope he
follows it.
Decides to follow it.
Yeah.
I think that would be good for the country. I think it would be good for his political career. Yeah. Now, people say that President Reagan didn't abolish the Department of Education because he didn't have the votes, but all he has to do is veto the funding. If you zero fund it, it's gone. The civil servants don't show up for work if there's no money there.
Unfortunately, I think his secretary, Terell Bell, somehow managed to convince Reagan to drop that as a priority.
I am proud to say that the Conservative Caucus Foundation was instrumental in the firing of Terell Bell. This is the fact. We do a lot of monitoring of where government grants and contracts go, and we discovered that Secretary Bell had given a significant grant of taxpayers' money to the National Education Association. I took the documentation, I gave it to Ed Meese, a wonderful man who did a great job for President Reagan, and within a week, Terell Bell was fired.
Terell Bell also was a big promoter of all kinds of wacky educational fads when he was the lead guy on education in Utah, including outcome-based education. He's the one who brought OBE to Utah. So people who were fighters in the schools against all these wacky methodologies were kind of shocked to begin with when this man was appointed. I don't know who advised Reagan
Orrin
to appoint
Hatch,
this man.
who gave us Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court, gave us Terell Bell as Secretary of Education.
Well, that explains that.
Well, There's an old saying, as you know, in Washington, don't count your hatches until they've chickened. But we have to take a break right now, and we'll be back right after these messages with the Executive Director of the Council for National Policy, which may not share all of his views, but they should, Steve Baldwin. Stay with us.
I'm Congressman Tom Tancredo. You know, I just returned from a hearing on the southern border in a place called Brownsville, Texas. One of the participants in the hearing told us that for them, a border really doesn't exist between the United States and Mexico. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people have that attitude, that there are no such things as borders, that they really don't matter, that they're just lines on a map and nobody should pay attention to them, and that we're all just residents of the North American continent. Well, you know what? That's baloney. It's baloney, but only if you will do something about it to prove to the people of this country, and especially to your elected officials, that you know borders matter, that you know the sovereignty of this country is at risk, and that you will take action to make sure that they understand it. That action is best taken by calling your local talk radio stations, writing letters to the editor, and of course, letting members of Congress know that you know. That's the best thing. They're hoping, as a matter of fact, that no one really picks up on this issue of a North American trade association that essentially eliminates borders. But the fact is it's happening. You can see parts of it all of the time. So it's something that we need to stop. America, and I mean the United States of America, not the continent, but the United States of America is at stake. Do your part on it.
Welcome back to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, Chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable. We're pleased to have as our guest Steve Baldwin, author of the important book From Crayons to Condoms. And it isn't just the condoms, it's Islamic indoctrination.
Well, one of the things we found that parents were complaining about as we did our research was how some of the comparative religious textbooks and even history textbooks were all being slanted in favor of radical Islam. As I dug into this topic, I found that Saudi front groups were funneling money into pressure groups here in America that were influencing the textbook adoption process, and in some cases were harassing the publishers into getting contracts so that the actual writing of some of these textbooks were contracted out to radical Islamic partisans. And we have textbooks now commonly selected around the country which have a very slanted view of Israel, a very slanted view of Christianity, and 20 glowing pages about the triumphs and the peacefulness of Islam. And so we are indoctrinating our kids with some very strange and bizarre views.
What can be done by a teacher in a particular schoolroom who finds this troubling?
Well, usually a school district has to select from a list of approved textbooks, and there's usually other choices.
Who makes the list?
The list is usually done at the state level, the state education level, but the local school board can select which books to choose. And there may be some flexibility there, allowing some school districts to select to make a choice of a book that may not be as biased as the ones I'm talking about.
Have there been any significant controversies in which teachers or PTAs tried to exclude pro-radical Islamic books from the classroom.
Oh, yeah, all over America. We've had charter schools run by radical Islamic people create some controversy. We had a situation in San Diego where a substitute teacher came in to a classroom that she had never taught in before, and around 10 o'clock in the morning, suddenly the students stood up, locked the door, closed the blinds, pushed all the chairs to the side, and laid carpets down and prayed towards Mecca during instructional time. And she complained, and no one did anything about it. She finally went on the Roger Hitchcock show in San Diego, made a huge stink about it, and finally there was somewhat of an investigation. But this is going on in our public schools.
Now, why did those children do it?
Well, they're in a particular part of the town which was heavily Islamic, but still, they don't have any rights to interrupt instructional time. If they want to pray to Mecca during lunchtime or recess, they have that right to. But this is during class time. And if a Christian group did that, the ACLU would be there the next day suing the school. And we're getting complaints where the children are being asked to pretend like they're pilgrims to Mecca, and they have to dress in a burqa and memorize sections of the Quran, and literally role play. And if a student were to do that on the Christian or Judaism side, I'm pretty certain there'd be lawsuits again. So we're seeing a heavy push towards Islamic thinking. The way they define Israel usually as an occupied nation in most of our textbooks today. Christianity is always taught in a very negative way. Crusades is featured in a very negative sense. Just bad history. Bad history.
Now, do school boards get involved in these controversies? Are they active in political campaigns, people running for the school committee?
Parents have challenged some school boards and thrown some school board members out over these controversies, but we're not seeing enough of that happen. We're seeing school boards pretty much get away with whatever they want to do, dominated by liberals by and large throughout the country.
So there's passivity that works to the advantage of the radicals.
Absolutely.
And probably the same is true about homosexuality.
This is even worse. The homosexual movement actually has a group with a multi-million-dollar budget that's sole purpose is to influence school curriculum, school speaking assemblies, school literature, school history textbooks, and they are active in every single state, and they have faculty members and teachers. They have actual chapters, and they meet on a regular basis, and they figure out how to infiltrate pro-homosexual propaganda into every aspect of the curriculum.
What are some of the group's names?
Gay and lesbian, straight teachers education network or something like that. I may not have that exactly right. GLSTEN, I believe. That's the largest group in America.
The power of the sodomite community is terrifying. The lesbians, the transgender people, etc. At my church, McLean Bible Church, our pastor this past Sunday spoke of the fact that they were seeking to rent a facility that is funded by the government in Washington, D.C., and they were on the verge of signing, this is with the Shakespeare Theater, the Harmon Theater, they were on the verge of signing a rental agreement so they could have worship services here, just as other groups are permitted to use it. And Michael Kahn, the head of the chief producer of the Shakespeare production, said, "We're very sorry. We discovered that your church is against abortion and is against homosexuality, and we will not rent this to you." I mean, they could rent it to a homosexual group, they would rent it to a lesbian group, they would rent it to a pro-abortion group,
Amazing.
But they would not make it available to a group which stands on God's word.
We have actual public schools dedicated to homosexuality called the Eagle School in L.A. They call it something else in New York, where they actually have a separate entire location built just to do nothing but promote homosexuality. And they find the students they believe are leaning that way, they yank them out of the normal schools, if you want to call them normal, and they put them in the special pro-homosexual schools in New York, L.A., and it's coming in all the major cities. They have gay proms now, where they actually invite adult homosexuals in to a prom where they can meet young students. And so I guess the child molesters probably love that idea. I actually fired off a letter and tried to initiate an investigation when I was chair of the Education Committee, because I found that the LA Unified had a homosexual prom, and they invited a number of convicted sex offenders. And so I held a press conference. They threatened to sue me because I was complaining about the presence of sex offenders at a LA Unified homosexual prom.
How did your constituents feel about what you were doing?
My constituents totally supported me in San Diego. I had protests from time to time outside my office, but generally they came from outside my district. I had a fairly conservative district.
Well, really, the only reform that works is for parents to take their children out of the government schools, which promote radical Islam, promote abortion, promote sodomy, and promote anti-patriotism.
Well, my biggest disappointment with American church is the fact that 90% of the churches in this country, their facilities are empty Monday through Friday. And they usually have a pool of talented people who worship there, many who are fully capable of teaching, and yet very few of these churches have committed themselves to forming private schools. Why? I don't understand it.
Well, I think the growth of the homeschool movement is based in large part on parental antipathy to the problems you've described and a sense of frustration that it's so difficult to do anything about these problems.
Yeah.
And there really is not a proper role for the government in education. The very word education stems from the Latin word to lead, duca, to lead. And the question is, where are the schools leading the children? And the leading of the children is the responsibility of the parent, not even of the teacher, certainly not of a school board, and certainly not the responsibility of these radical pressure groups that have acquired so much influence.
People need to understand, too, this is not an American value. Public schools came around. The first major city with public school system was the Boston system in, I think, 1840.
Horace Mann.
Horace Mann, and there was an agenda. There wasn't a need. The vast majority of students were in church-run schools or being homeschooled. There wasn't a crisis. It was all done for purely political reasons to try to break children away from the, quote, biases of their parents. And it took the liberals some time after that to actually do that. But the purpose of the original public school was political to begin with.
And it was indoctrination.
It was indoctrination.
Steve, we have to take a break. When we come back, Steve Baldwin will tell you more about his important book, From Crayons to Condoms, and you can get some information about where this book can be obtained. Please stay with us. I'm Howard Phillips, and our guest is Steve Baldwin.
This is Duncan Hunter, Congressman San Diego, and you know, I built that border fence that we use in San Diego right now, the double fence, and I wrote the law that takes the fence some 700 plus miles across Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and California. And I just want to urge everyone, stand strong on border control. And don't open the door to amnesty, because if you open the door to amnesty, we're going to see massive waves of folks coming into this country illegally, and you'll have lots of people coming in illegally expecting to catch the next amnesty and the next amnesty. We need border control, and we need to enforce existing laws. Hang in there.
Hi, I'm United States Representative Thaddeus McCotter from Michigan's 11th Congressional District. As we enter a new millennium of hope and peril, with so many problems besetting our country and yet so many opportunities before us, it is oftentimes tempting to think that your voice doesn't matter. What can one person do to make a difference in the life of their community and their country? Well, the first thing you can do is to contact your legislator. You are one of the sovereign citizens of the United States. You elect your servants to work for you in Congress. Let them know what you think. Send them a letter, send them an email, call them on the phone. Your voice matters, because if you don't raise your voice in the interest of our free republic, who will?
Here's how you can become a citizen lobbyist and influence how your representatives vote. Write a letter to your congressmen and senators. Speak out on a call-in talk radio program. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper and call the Conservative Caucus for more information at 703-938-9626.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, Chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable. If you're interested in the kinds of issues we discuss on Roundtable, please check out our website, www.conservativeusa.org. One of our top issues is fighting the North American Union. Check out nauwarroom.org. And you can get on our list for publications, no cost or obligation. Send your name and address to 703-281-4108, which is our fax number. Steve, how can people learn more about your book and be in touch with you?
Well, the best thing to do is to go to WorldNet Daily's website, wnd.com, and there's a button you can click to which goes to their book division, and they can tell you all about the book there.
WorldNet Daily has done a great job on so many fronts. We owe a big debt to Joe Farah. I remember when he was running the Sacramento Union, which at that point was probably the best conservative newspaper in America.
Sure was.
And I'm glad that he has another outlet in WorldNet Daily.
He's been a great hero for the conservative cause.
It took you 5 or 6 years to write this book. It's based on anecdotes that were shoveled into you by concerned parents.
We've collected about 500 stories from parents. We're only able to use about 85.
Well, maybe you can do another book.
We could. We verified all the material. We actually, if the parent was complaining about a bizarre test, we got a copy of the test. If they were complaining about whole language or cooperative learning or whatever, we actually got copies of it all. So everything in this book is footnote and verified.
How do you educate your kids?
Well, they were all I have 4 boys, and they were all in a local private Christian school until recently, and I just couldn't afford to keep them all in the private Christian school, and it only went up to a certain grade. So they're in public schools right now. Well, but I watch it like a hawk. I review all the curriculum every semester, and I'm quite involved.
It's tough. I really appreciate the work you're doing, Steve. Thank you so much. And good luck with the book and everything else you do. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching us on Conservative Roundtable.